builds to use for season 2 and beyond. There'll be timestamps for builds down below. Alright, so in the update, they basically lessened the minimum threshold of the height and weight for the balanced builds and then the bigger, stronger builds. I have a video on the channel, I'll link it up in the top right. It goes over the different categories for the builds. But essentially, if you look at a two-way defenseman here, before the max height, or the minimum height I should say, I think was 5'10", you can now make it 5'8". The weight was 195 was the minimum that you can have it. Now you can set it to 175. And essentially what that does is that allows you to have 94 speed, which is very close to the maximum speed that a shorter, quicker build can have, which is 95. But a lot of builds typically average around 94 because they're at 6'1", 160. You can now have 94 and match them with these types of builds. Now that goes with two-way defenseman, that goes with grinder, that goes with two-way forward. Those types of medium balanced size builds that had a maximum speed that was 92. You can now bump that up. Now the same thing goes with a power forward, enforcer, defensive defenseman. Before the minimum was 6'2", 210. You can now crank this down to 6 foot if you wish. Doesn't make a difference with the point value, so I kept it at 6'2". And at 195 is now the minimum, which was what the balanced builds were, like the two-way defenseman, etc. You can now essentially have that, making this now these bigger size builds capable of reaching 92 speed. So that essentially eliminates the need to go big with these types of builds, because speed being the meta, everybody wants to have speed, so everybody will be using these types of builds, lessening the weight to make themselves as fast as they could possibly go. And now being able to utilize an OP trait in Truculent's Unstoppable Force, which you had to cap your speed at 90, it essentially makes these builds even more OP because now they're very close to everybody else's speed. I honestly think this is a really good update by EA, A+ for them. It opens up the availability of a lot of builds based on what type of zone ability you want to have. You are no longer capped or forced to use a build like this 6'1", 160 with gold elite edges because that's what everybody else has, because everybody's trying to reach the maximum amount of speed in the game. Now you can experiment, create different builds, and not sacrifice speed because you're after a certain zone ability. And now on to the builds. The first build that I have as a defenseman, two-way defenseman, I like the 5'9". I mean, you can go with whatever height you want, 6'2" if you wish. 93 speed isn't, I mean, you're only talking about 1 point here. But I've been kind of liking the 5'9". The reason for it is because you get an additional point into your agility, different from, you know, 5'10" to 5'9". You get one more extra point in your agility, so I go with 5'9". I don't really feel too much of a difference. I feel more smooth. I actually like the shorter build, to be honest. I don't know if that makes a difference to your skating with the short strides compared to the longer strides, but it's something that isn't a huge drop off for me as a defenseman, just because my stick length is not as long as it used to be with 6'1". Obviously 175. We're going with gold shutdown here. This is essentially the only reason you would use a two-way defenseman. And gold shutdown with 94 speed, very nice. You can also now also use stick 'em up and then silver elite edges. If you're going to go with obviously a different build like this, it is still in your best interest to obviously have at least silver elite edges, because people are going to be still rocking the gold elite edges with the other builds. 90 agility with silver elite edges. I didn't see too much of a drop off compared to those builds. There's probably going to be certain animations that benefit the gold elite edges over silver, but again, the speed aspect of the game very similar to how it was with a PMD build. And then everything else pretty much stays the same. You know, you could set this to whatever you wish. Defense in this game, all of that is pretty much up to you and how you want to set it. Then the next one, kind of a reverse look. Two-way forward, although you can use this as a defenseman too, and this is actually what I have set for that. This is a defenseman two-way forward, 5'9", 175. Now you have the ability to shoot the puck at the point, and you still had 94 speed. So Heat Seeker, you can go and set this to anything. I think anything beyond Yoink can be used with the two-way forward, either as a center, which is essentially what these first two traits are here, no contest stick 'em up, and also a defenseman, you can use stick 'em up there as well, or Heat Seeker at the point if you're taking shots, at the point a lot for tips, all that kind of stuff, or just for a more powerful shot. And then gold quick pick as well if you feel you need that for intercepts. But again, 94 speed with that is pretty nice. And then you can experiment with whatever superstar traits you've got. Since I'm using gold heat seeker, again, silver elite edges is a must. And then at least for me, I like the silver shutdown. Combos with poke checks and body checks, I think it's a pretty good lockdown trait. Now on the flip side, if I was going to use center for this, you can go with whatever trait you wish. No contest at the esports level is banned. If you ever have thoughts or in the process of being on an esports contending team, you obviously don't want to be using no contest, but stick them up. Very good solid trait here. But again, you could always use no contest if you wish. This is there. And then obviously you would have to raise your face-offs to hit 90 with this build. So your discipline will take a knockoff there. And as well as deking. And the rest of this could be pretty much tuned to whatever you see fit for that. Now for heat seeker, if you were going to use that as a defenseman, you don't necessarily need to have the best shooting for that. As a defenseman, having the trait itself, I think, is good enough. But if you wanted to be a sniper, I guess you can raise your wrist shot accuracy and power. Just note that by lowering your agility to probably make that happen. You don't want to obviously lower speed. You know, with silver elite edges, mid 85, you will be a little bit slower than those elite edges gold 90 something plus agility builds. So keep that in mind if you want to raise your wrist shot accuracy to accommodate for as well having a more powerful shot in heat seeker. And then now the next build here, obviously sticking with now power forward gold truck. You would use this for threes. I wouldn't recommend using this in sixes due to a lot of charging, elbowing calls, etc. But 6'2", 195. Reason for 6'2" is there's no difference between 6 foot and 6'2". I just want the extra length in my stick. So gold truculence, elite edges, and then close quarters. Make it snappy as well. This is more again for an offensive build. You can shoot the puck with this build. Make it snappy has been used a lot. Close quarters has been used a lot. Snipe as well, I hear. Not too bad. Or you can go with something else and maybe tape to tape or whatever you wish for this build. You can go with a defensive trait as well. Something like that. But I like the close quarters, truculence combo, shooting threat for me. Just to make the shot a little bit better. This doesn't actually have to be there. This could be again +2 to your excel to create that 92 speed, 92 excel, so you're not that much different from those builds. I mean, plus 12 points is crazy to that. Obviously, this build ain't gonna be that much, you know, different, but it is severely. You could definitely tell the difference with the speed compared to how they used to be. Just facing off against a gold truculence player in threes, and he was very fast, and he can also hit, so it makes this build very useful in threes. I do not recommend it for sixes. And now for a defensive build, defensive defenseman, same idea. 6'2", 195 gold truck. I have tape to tape. That's just more for breakout passes, just more on point passes, booming hits for me, alongside power skating. Got a little bit more agility for this build because I dropped off the shot. For defensive defenseman, you're not going to be shooting the puck at the point. More points into agility to keep up with those guys, and you've got the ability to blast guys. So this is a very lockdown build. Passing not too good, that's why tape to tape's there. Offensive awareness not going to be there, but 85 body check-in with booming hits and gold truck. You're going to be hitting guys very easily, as well as having good solid stick checking and defensive awareness on top of that. Now, a very interesting build here that I actually like, that might be starting to use more in a sixes environment, would be the offensive defenseman. So 5'9", 175 again with that 94 speed, 94 excel. That's what the power skating steady strides is there. A gold 1T at the point, as well as the ability to still stay locked down. Now, there is a bit of a drop off here compared to the puck moving defenseman. You could always lower your offensive awareness if you wish to have a little bit more defensive awareness. I do recommend probably having that. And you could, of course, change out steady strides for a +4 for your defensive awareness to increase that even more, make it a little bit more solid, but still the capability of blasting this puck at the point. Naturally, the shot accuracy and power is better on an offensive defenseman, very similar to the sniper. Not quite as good, but it is still there when you subtract it. And actually for this build, this is actually set to if I was going to be a winger. So this doesn't have to be just at the point. This could also be for when you're a winger build. Basically very, very similar to a sniper, but the ability to, again, play defense. So with the snipers, you're looking at low 70s with your defense. The ability to throw on a gold 1T trait. Close quarters, elite edges, 94 speed. You can also make this, again, 94 excel. So you're no different than your 6'1", 160 builds, but the ability to have gold 1T there with it, I mean, how can you say no to a build like that? It combines both of those natures together. And I think this is probably a build that I would see being translated into LG for winger builds, because they can be locked down. They can blast a 1T in general. Now again, you can cycle through maybe even Heat Seeker if you wish, or stick with gold 1T at the point. And then if that was going to be the case, I would throw on Shutdown. It allows you to play a little more defensive. You can subtract body check in a little bit more, apply more for your defensive awareness. So it's very similar to the puck moving defenseman when it comes to defense in general. Not very good with passing, but it's got the capabilities of blasting it at the point if that was something you were going to do for a defenseman. And then it's got the capabilities on the offensive side as well. So the last build that I would recommend here is, again, Grinder, 5'9", 175. You can, again, you can set the the height to whatever you wish. I would recommend obviously solidifying your weight at 175, keeping to that 94, 93, whatever speed range. If you're gonna mess with the height, make it a little bit taller. But you got the capabilities of having gold big tipper, and still very solid defense in this. Very similar to the two-way forward in terms of that. Slightly weaker, I would say, but still pretty much on par. And you can have that gold big tipper. So again, it just changes the range of the capabilities that you have, the variety of builds that you can actually have for your specific playstyle. That's something I actually like a lot about this. I think all these other traits not very useful for this. Big tipper is pretty much the one you're going to grab. And then I have Shutdown. If I was going to play this, it would be for a center. I'd be parking myself in the slot on both sides of the ice, being Shutdown, and then as well as tipping pucks, being elite edges with 94 speed. And then I've got positional IQ just to increase that, but of course you can always change this for +2 for your acceleration. 94 speed, 94 excel on a center that can deflect pucks and still stay shut down. If that is your style, this is a pretty solid build. Just note, LG wise, big tipper is banned, can't use it. But if you're playing pubs with your teammates, it doesn't really matter. Now, nothing has changed for my sniper build, playmaker build, and the dangler. Pretty much everything is the same. There was no update to change any of these types of builds, so understand that these pretty much are going to be staying the same for you. If you have it set, then it's set.